Yo, this is Tommy Lee. Yeah, that T Lee. And you're listening to Promoter 101. Fucking turn this shit up, bitches.
Ladies, gentlemen, and children of all ages, please direct your attention to the center of the ring. Making his way from Emporium Presents, the live touring podcast reigning champion of the world, Dan Steiny Steinberg.
We have an old-timey episode just smoking hot for you this week of Promoter 101. It's number 57, and in my corner, as always, the manager and coach, the great Luke Pierce.
Hello, friends out there in podcast land. We absolutely have a great podcast lined up this week. We're going to be joined a little bit later by the agent behind Anderson East, Big Gigantic, Sturgill Simpson, the Lumineers, Paradigm's Joe Atamian. Seemingly, Dan, he just can't miss right now. That guy is absolutely on fire. And coming in from Live Nation New York, we're going to be joined by Mr. Sean Striegel. He's got some stories from some of the biggest shows in the world. And Dan, in the spirit of the Country Music Association Awards this week, we've got 30-year CMA board member, Mr. Tony Conway, popping by to share one of his amazing war stories. And as always, we got news of the week with Oakview Group and Pollstar's Ray Waddell.
It's Adam Voith from Billions, and I'm on Promoter 101.
If you're a fan of the podcast, you can catch us live on tour when we come to a market near you.
Dan, very excited to let the cat out of the bag this week on a new development for Promoter 101. You're going to be sitting down live for a one-on-one interview with the president of Ticketmaster North America, Mr. Jared Smith. That's all happening December 8th at the Aspen Live Conference.
What a legend. Can't wait to hear what he has to say.
That's going to be a great one in that room, Dan. I think we should, for a second, plug the Aspen Live Conference and talk a little bit about what an amazing experience that would be for people that are listeners of this podcast.
I like to say that South by is like the high school experience opposed to Pollstar and Billboard being the college experience, and then Aspen Live is the grad program when it comes to this industry. It's the best hang in the business, always a good time, and you get the ear of some of the best people in the industry, and there's really no ego there. It's just a fun, down-to-earth way to wind down the year, Luke.
Absolutely. And you'll be there December 8th sitting out with Jared Smith. It's going to be a great, great session.
We're rolling into the Big Easy January 16th for Promoter 101 at FlyCon for the first time ever with special guests from Lock-In and the Brooklyn Bowl, Mr. Peter Shapiro.
Very excited to be down in the Big Easy. It's going to be a great time at FlyCon. Looking forward to the sit down with Shappy and some amazing stories. In the meantime, make sure you stay up with us on Twitter. Steiny is at The Jew, and the show is at Promoters 101. That's Promoters, plural. I'm at W. Luke Pierce.
We want to hear from you. Luke and I are always talking, and it just doesn't have to be that way. We're ready to listen to you. Send us your thoughts, your comments, your ideas, whatever. Steiny at promoter101.net. We can't wait to hear from you. We promise we'll get back to you in a timely manner, and we might even be nice about it.
And if you haven't yet, be sure to subscribe to Promoter 101 wherever you podcast. And please help us out. Spread the word. Tell your friends. Tell your family. Drop us a review on iTunes if you get a moment. It seriously helps our ratings.
If you've missed any of the past podcasts, you can always catch up at promoter101.net. This week, we're featuring a special reissue of episode 15. We got the Supermensch, Alice Cooper's manager, Shep Gordon. We promise you this interview is worth listening to, and a great companion piece with this interview is the documentary about his life, Supermensch, produced by Mike Myers.
We haven't spent a whole lot of time other than Shep's interview during one of those early podcasts talking about how great that is. We're going to revisit that at some point.
It was an experience to spend some time with him, and before we recorded it a year earlier, me, Luke, David Britz, and Jason Zink had an opportunity to pay a social call to Shep while we were in Maui with the Straight No Chaser guys, and I gotta tell you, it was one of the funnest experiences of my life.
If you've listened to our podcast, you've heard our theme song. It's called Tongue Bath. It was written and performed by APA's Craig Newman. We're challenging our listeners out there to take a crack at rearranging or re-recording the song. If we like it, we'll use it on the show. And note, you must be willing to waive any rights so we can play this track, but we'd love to hear your versions in the meantime. Send them over to Steiny at promoter101.net.
Hey, this is Mike Luganbill from Straight No Chaser, and you're listening to Promoter 101 with Dan Steinberg and Luke Pierce.
Dan, it's time for News of the Week. We'd love to welcome from Oakview Group and Pollstar, Mr. Ray Waddell. Welcome to Promoter 101.
I'm happy to be here.
Big news with you. For years after being at Billboard, you've got new digs. Catch us up.
Sure, yeah. Billboard was awesome. I spent 30 years there, basically learned about the live music business and music business in general. It was just a great opportunity. I really appreciate it, and there's really no brand like it in our business or in the trade business. Be forever grateful to those guys. But, when Tim Lawicki and Irving Azoff come calling, you pay attention. And I was real excited about their passion and their vision. They gave me the opportunity to work at Oakview Group, oversee their conferences and publications. At that time, it was just Venues Today and SportTechie.com, which covers the tech business in the sports world. It just seemed like a lot of fun. So it took a lot for me to leave Billboard. And, we acquired Pollstar back over the summer.
Bon Giovanni and Gary Smith are both still there. So how does that interaction work?
The way it works is my division oversees the conferences and the publications, right? So we have the Pollstar Conference and we have Venues Now in the summer, which if you look at it, it's like the two pillars of what we do on the media side is around content and venues, right? Pollstar, the magazine and the conference, is about the content side of it, and Venues Now, which it's the venue side of it. And of course they bleed over into each other quite a lot, but those publications view things through those respective lenses, right? I hired Andy Ginsler away from Billboard. Andy's sort of running our editorial side of things. He's splitting time between Venues Today and Pollstar. Next week we'll launch a daily newsletter, Pollstar Daily Pulse, which you guys will start seeing on your inboxes.
Now you're running the biggest conference in the industry, Pollstar Live.
Yeah, it's like giving me the greatest toolbox in the world to play with. As you would know, Dan, because people are still offended by your great panel there. You offended more people than Gene Simmons, which is saying something.
We aim to please, my friend. We aim to please.
I'm only kidding, man. It was great. But to be able to jump in there and work on Pollstar Live with what the Garys have built, also Production Live, it's just the opportunity of a lifetime. I was thrilled about it. It had a lot to do with why this whole gig was appealing to me.
Who are some of the big names that you have for the conference already?
Mark Cuban, and of course we've got Neil Portnow and the Grammy team to talk about behind the Grammys. And I'm putting together a shitload of panels, and every one of them, in my opinion, is great, but it's a little bit of everything. What I do is try to fit all the pieces of the puzzle together and what you put up against each other when you have concurrent sessions. But I dip into a lot of different things. I think the ticketing industry is about mobile. And so instead of yet another panel on secondary market ticketing and people bitching at each other, I'm just going to dive into mobile and take a look at the comedy business and how that's evolved and what global international touring's like with all the things that have happened with the travel bans and security and terrorism and political unrest. That game has changed as it explodes. It's like international touring has been on such a roll. What could slow it down? But, there's a couple of things that really matter a lot to OVG, and that's technology and security. And we have a security company as part of our portfolio, but beyond that, it's just an area of focus for us, as is technology. So we're going to have a couple of panels each on those, and it will infuse pretty much any panel. And then Production Live we see as a real growth opportunity to look at that side of the business.
I don't know how much bigger you can get than Michael Rapino and Mark Cuban. I mean, that kind of is the creme de la creme of this industry.
It's pretty good, no doubt.
U2 has announced another U.S. tour.
Yeah, I think they're going to catch on. I think they're going to be a big band. It's interesting, U2. It's like their little side project diversion around the Joshua Tree grossed, $316 million from 20 dates or so. And now they're back to the serious business of touring on new music, which there's few things in this business more exciting than a U2 tour as biggest touring act in the world.
No question. I think a lot of people are excited to see them revisit the back catalog with some of those hits. That was an amazing production show, as they're always cutting edge on that. I'm sure the arena tour will be no different than the stadium tour when it comes to bringing a serious production show.
I enjoyed the innocence part of that with the cylindrical video and the catwalk. And it's very creative on the production side, and I dug the new music as well. So this should be good.
Can we jump into ticketing for a second? It seems like there's a new third big player. eTix has really upped their game by buying Extreme Tix and Ticket Biscuit last week.
They did, and I guess it was a huge move for them. They got the capital to do it. They seem to have picked companies that mesh well with their software. What happened was, with the internet ticketing, as expected, it lowered the barriers to entry, and a lot of companies cropped up and found success and created very specific solutions. And then now we're seeing this consolidation that comes after that. I would say to anybody in ticketing, if you're not in the mobile game in a creative way and ways that tie into other aspects of the career, then you're missing it. So here's hoping they have a good mobile solution going with all of that as well.
So you guys just broke the Pollstar Concert Pulse listing, which has the biggest tours in the world by gross, average ticket sale, average ticket price, and number of cities. And topping out that list, of course, is U2, Coldplay, Celine Dion, Guns N' Roses, Lady Gaga, Tom Petty, Bruno Mars, Roger Waters, Depeche Mode, and Ed Sheeran. Business seems to be moving into the direction of the stadiums. These are all massive tours.
I think the interesting thing about digging into the Pollstar numbers is the farther you get down, there's success at every venue level. You know, I've covered this, as I say, 30 years. I listen to promoters bitch even when times were good. I've listened to them compete with each other. The competition is always exciting and interesting. But these times, in the last couple of years, you know, of course, everybody, the great slump of 2009 and 2010, that was bad, right? There was a lot of bad things that happened, and the industry didn't react to a general economic downturn very well, but we've come out of this so strong, and I think there are a whole lot of cultural tailwinds that are back that are driving this thing, but it's a great time to be in the live business no matter what you're doing. If you touch live business, you're finding success. Really good times for people who do it right.
There's no question. I mean, even Jerry Seinfeld, a comedian with a microphone, popping it in number 18 on that list right now, playing theaters, doing serious business.
And it's all profit, man.
I guess when you promote yourself and you're the star, it makes it a little easier on the risk, huh?
I have a low overhead.
I'm looking forward to seeing what you guys do at Oakview Group next. I'm wondering who else you acquire. I think it's an interesting thing. Before I let you go, can we talk about the AEG Live Nation Oakview Group controversy? Can I get your take on all of this?
I heard a little bit about that. I can tell you this about it. Before I ever took the gig, it was very clear from Tim and Irving that I had to be able to chart our course. We couldn't play any kind of favorites or whatever. We just cover the business as we see it. You got to have that credibility, and I have to say they've never influenced me at all on that. We don't even break our own stories. I mean, Dave Brooks breaks our stories. I don't get to jump in there on those. But it's a tough business. People compete hard. I love those guys at AEG. They've always been really good to me. I had Jay Marciano as one of my keynotes at Billboard. I had Paul Tolletta. The guys at AEG are great promoters. They're just competing. They're competing hard. All of this is going to work itself out, and the acts play where they want to play. That never changes. So a lot of this, I would say, is overblown. Hell, Tim hired most of those guys over there at AEG. He's friendly with all of them. Put it this way, it doesn't affect what I do other than there should be some good stories come out of it.
The concept of a promoter that owns both the media and the venues and the tours at the same time, you guys are creating a whole new world, changing the game.
I'm in a position that I never thought I would be in. A lot of times I'm more executive than reporter. In fact, it's kind of like we're charting a new course here. I can just say that in a lot of ways it is silos. The business they're in hasn't had any impact on the journalist side of it, on the publication side of it. I would defy anybody to find any instance where that ever happens. Like I said, I think the opposite is really true. So if you can find anything in any of our pages that would make you say, well, they're the same company, I would love to see it because I don't think it exists. We always come back to those two rules, and it's about fan experience and treating fans good and taking care of the artists so they can play good music for us. That's the bottom line.
Absolutely. Hey, I want to thank you so much for taking the time and talking to us on Promoter 101, Ray.
Thanks a lot, guys. I appreciate it.
Always great to have Ray on the podcast. Guy is an icon and a legend, Luke. And finally, we want to take a moment to shine a spotlight on this week's Promoter 101 Badass of the Week, Allie Shaw. She's the queen of sponsorship and a serious mover and shaker, making her this week's Promoter 101 Badass of the Week. Congrats goes out to you, Allie. Well deserved.
Hi, I'm Holly Gleason, editor of Women Walk the Line, here at Promoter 101, where they know how to get it done.
In our featured interview this week, we're joined by Paradigm's Joe Atamian. Not only is he half of the Agent versus Promoter account, but he also handles the careers of Sturgill Simpson, Big Gigantic, and the Lumineers. Excited to welcome this week's feature interview, Paradigm's Mr. Joe Atamian.
Mr. Atamian, thank you so much for making time.
Definitely, man. Good to be here.
You are having an amazing run. Lightning seems to be striking time after time after time.
Yeah, it's been good, man. You know, it's been busy with a bunch of my acts, and everybody wants to keep working and work with a lot of hardworking people, and just keeps on rolling.
If it was just Big Gigantic as your biggest act, you would still be on the top 10% of like agents that got lucky enough to book something cool. and they're doing amazing business and are that cool. But your roster keeps going. It's like the year that Lumineers had on top of like Sturgill, and then there's all this other developing stuff that's coming up. Anderson East, it's amazing.
Yeah, man. It's like I said, it's been really good and been pretty fortunate to get on board with a lot of these acts early and help the developmental process of it. And when you get on board super early, which seems to be the case more and more, you know, you get to kind of ride that wave and help lay the foundation for the whole plan moving forward.
Do you have a certain something that you're looking for when you see an act? It's because it certainly is not based by genre, because your act certainly couldn't tour together.
Right. No, for sure. It's funny. Like, I can usually tell within 30 seconds of listening to something. So I was talking to somebody else about this the other day, and that sounds kind of bad to just listen to something for 30 seconds and being able to tell whether or not you're into it. But I think what it is just there's got to be some sort of uniqueness to it. I mean, any of my acts that I work with, I listen to them, and whether it be the genre of the music or the person's voice or the songwriting, there's got to be something that kind of jumps out and grabs you right away. And I think that's pretty much it on my end.
Some of this stuff has happened like quicker than you'd ever expect. I mean, we were talking about Sturgill a couple of years ago, and we both knew the writing was on the wall. It just kept growing so quickly. It was so viral.
It's funny because, you know, it's happened a couple times, but kind of the old adage, it's 10-year overnight success. Sturgill especially, you know, he had been grinding it out forever, and not even just in the music industry, but between his time working for the railroad and everything like that, like it kind of gave him all that life perspective to get to a point where he could write songs that really connected with people. So it does happen quick sometimes if you're looking at it from the outside. But, you know, I think if you asked him or you asked the Lumineers and big gigantic guys, Anderson, I mean, all these guys, they've been cranking on it forever. When it connects, sometimes it goes quicker that way, but the build up to it always takes a while.
You talk about Sturgill, and you're talking about a guy with no ego.
Yeah, no, for sure. And, you know, that was, I can't remember what festival it was. It might have been Glastonbury or something. We were talking about it. And, you know, his two favorite sets were Skrillex and Dolly Parton.
That's eclectic.
And it comes through in his music, too. Like, just musically, you've seen him kind of progress. And he's going to continue to do that with the next one as well. But it just kind of shows his range of taste.
I got to spend a little bit of time with him and Jonathan Levine in Portland recently, and we were both nerding out to Jonathan's musical history, which is amazing. And he was telling us stories about Live and the week that Jerry died, and the two of us were both just soaking it up. But it was clear, it's just like he's just such a fan of the industry and what's going on. And
yeah, and he's super plugged in and super smart too. And that kind of goes back to the 10-year overnight success, is that, you know, he's been around the block a time or two, and he gets how it works for sure.
Do you have personal relationships where you're friends and you hang out? It's not just a business relationship with most of your artists?
It kind of varies. Sturgill lives a block away from me, so that's a little bit different. And I try to make an effort to get to know my acts on a personal level as well. You know, it's a lot of travel as it is. So whenever I'm with them, we try to take some time out and go get a dinner and not talk business and leave all that stuff to the suits during the week.
A lot of big looks for your act this year. I mean, talking about opening up stadium shows for you too with Lumineers, and, you know, then you guys had Petty in Seattle where you got to open, and some really cool big things. Guns N' Roses for Sturgill, Big Gigantics headlining all of these amazing festivals. You were all over the place.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm not too much of a jaded fuck yet, so there's a lot of special stuff, especially this summer, that happened that I felt like I wanted to be at. And I mean, you never know. Like, you know, the Petty thing in particular was, I almost didn't go up there for that show just because I was pretty run down that week. And you never know. I'm glad I got to see him.
Talking about the biggest tours of the year, you guys were supporting all over the place. You had U2, you had Petty, you had Guns N' Roses.
Yeah, and all those, I mean, it was, a lot of it came from, you know, the band side. They get it too, and I'm fortunate enough to work with acts that can kind of see that and get that it's a bigger opportunity than just we're going to play in front of X amount of people, which is a lot of people. But at the same time, you know, musically, it was a lot of their icons and who they grew up listening to and wanting to go see.
You guys intentionally didn't book a lot for this summer for Sturgill, knowing that the opportunities would come in late to backfill with some major stuff.
It's all just kind of part of the making all the puzzle pieces fit. It was one of those things where Sturgill in particular wanted to present the songs from Sailor's Guide, but do it in a different way. When we did the first tour, it was this big production with horns and everything like that, and stripped it back to a 4-piece and got out there. And, you know, it's a completely different show. The songs are completely different. It was artistically, I think it was pretty fulfilling for him.
So you guys have had some serious big moments with him in particular this year. And it was kind of a 1-2 punch with winning the biggest award you can possibly win in the industry on top of Saturday Night Live being, what, a week apart?
Right. Yep. It was about a week apart. Yeah. And that played into it too. Just, he wasn't really planning on working a whole lot this year. He saw those things happen, and he realized he's a smart guy. Like I said, he realized he should be out there. And
because the tour happened to go on sale that next second. Yeah, I noticed that.
Yeah, we got that set up beforehand, and the Grammy thing was great. That was just kind of icing on the cake.
Can we talk about the early days with the Lumineers? Because this is a next album cycle, and they continue to grow and get bigger and bigger. Your guys' success in New York was multiples and sellouts this year at Madison Square Garden. But going back to Colorado and the earlier days and how quickly that happened, because they went from zero to like headlining radio shows pretty quick. They were on big festivals. Like that song caught like no one could have ever expected.
Yeah, it was definitely a quick one. Obviously a song like that it happens very rarely. And it's even more rare for an act to follow it up and continue to grow their touring business, especially coming off a song like that. But yeah, I mean, early days, it was, again, they were grinding as well. They were out playing. I mean, I saw them, the first time I saw them was at Hotel Utah in San Francisco, and there was 20 people there. So they were out doing their thing before they had an agent. They were booking all their own shows, before they had a manager, before they had a label. They were out there trying to do it.
Amazing ride to watch that happen so quickly and be on those big stages. But over the course of the year, I've seen them 7-8 times over the course of the last couple of years, and you can see them as a young artist developing from a club band into developing into an arena act that knows how to own that stage. And that's not something that happens in 10 shows. That's something that has to happen over the course of 100 to 300, and then you become a Tom Petty where you've got that 5,000 shows of knowing what facial expressions are going to get the audience up. And those guys are really, really picking that up. You can see that development every time you see them.
Yeah, there was 2 distinct moments that it was actually funny because one of them was this summer. They opened for Dave Matthews Band in Charlottesville on that first record cycle when Dave was doing an arena tour. And at that show, I remember watching, them getting a standing ovation in Dave's hometown where no one could really give a fuck.
That's high praise.
Exactly. So watching that show and being like, okay, they can play arenas. And then this summer, it was almost the exact same thing watching them with U2, where by the end of the set, everybody's standing and, the place is 80% full, and I was like, okay.
Because when you go to a U2 show, you're not really caring who support is, although they've done a good job of you guys in Mumford and bringing real support.
Yeah, but it's, it's been a while since I'd been to a U2 show, and I forgot how crazy rabid their fans are, just about them in general.
And probably half that crowd is only going to go to that one show that year. Like, this is not your average going crowd. There are a lot of soccer moms in that are only going to that show.
Yep, definitely.
That's paying for the babysitter show.
Yep, no, for sure. And it was definitely a good response, and that's just, another one of those signs that they're still going the right direction, for sure.
We talk about how Las Vegas has changed your concerns of where you'll put your acts or the scenarios your acts are in, because you've obviously you don't want to book your acts in any scenarios that are going to put them in jeopardy, and now that's something you got to think about?
Yeah, it's... Or
are you thinking about that?
Yeah, I do. And
I mean, that hit awfully close to home.
No, for sure. And I've always been probably more cautious than most, I would think, just growing up with my dad as a police officer, at a festival, even before any of this happened, like the first thing I do is find exits and things like that. It's just kind of ingrained in me. So I'm a little paranoid when it comes to that stuff to start. But yeah, going forward with this, I have confidence that we work with enough smart people that it's going to be at the forefront of everybody's mind going forward. And that's, that's everybody from the promoters to the security companies to everything. So as far as it limiting what to do going forward, I don't personally think that's the way to go. It's one of those things like if we change the way we live our lives, then we've lost the battle. We just need to be more cognizant of what goes into it, I think, going forward.
It seems like a fair statement all the way around. Some of the stuff I don't think we can control.
Yeah.
The shooter was not on site.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's going to take some it's going to take some work to figure out, especially downtown festivals like that, just how to move forward. But like I said, we work with some smart people, so I think we'll figure it out.
Let's talk about agent versus promoter. It's obviously very well known now that it's out there, and I know our listeners know as you and Scott came on the show right after it got outed. But now that you guys have it back up and running and people can submit, like, how has that changed that for you?
It's been good. It's funny because we've gotten some didn't feel comfortable posting. Like somebody sent, and again, we don't even see who submits them.
It's totally blind.
It shows up as anonymous, so we don't know who submitted, but it was somebody just railing on. And I'm like, well, I can't fucking post this. There's no way. That's going to be a phone call. So it's been good though. It's good to kind of give people a voice. We've gotten a lot of good submissions. It's been fun.
There's some stuff that like you guys just laugh about but don't put up because it's just like pushing that line.
Right. It was like, well, at the very least, they're going to know that we approved this going out into the world.
Right.
So,
right. And I'm still a certain amount of those you guys are doing yourselves.
Right. Yeah, we are. Yeah, it's good too. And it's also some deniability as well. If we want to post something, like, I don't know.
Right. Which was the original idea, is to have the protection at night so you guys could be funny with it.
Right. And I don't know. Somebody submitted it. I don't know.
Right. Because they were never mean.
No.
They were always playful and fun and maybe a little poke, but never mean. Always meant in good fun intention.
Yeah. And that was the thing too. It was just like, it wasn't ever meant to be a malicious thing. It was, let's look at how ridiculous we all act sometimes.
So when we talked last time, which was seconds after you guys got outed, you had some feedback from some people. A couple months have passed now. Have you gotten anything more than positive response on people like that was a great prank, or has anybody come back sour?
No, not really. Everyone's had a pretty good attitude about it. I've gotten some blind emails from people, from like college students, saying that they enjoyed it and they learned a lot from it, which I thought was really funny.
It's a cool thing. It's something that we continually tell people to go check out because it's just the best. And you can just go back to the first of it and like scroll back through early Twitter or Tumblr and just see it all. And it's just the funniest thing, especially if you're a Seinfeld fan, because in particular, it's Seinfeld centric.
Yeah. But, yeah, at least to start, it was, for sure.
Well, I think there's something to be said about that, too, though, is the humor that you have to have this job, because there's so much pressure involved with all the different aspects, all the moving pieces.
Right.
Taking a second just to chuckle, because it's 30 seconds, and you're back to what you're doing.
Right. It's like, oh, yeah, that's happened to me before. And then you think about how ridiculous it is, and you get on with your stressful day.
No, I think it's an amazing thing that you guys have created. You have a way of doing things at Paradigm that I really have seen other agencies adapting to, and that's the concept of the team agents, where it's not just one guy signing an act all the time, there's still some of that, but there's a lot of people that can have multiple agents and multiple point contacts over there. In the case of Big Gigantic, you guys are tag teaming that with Jason Kupferman.
Yeah, and it's good. I mean, two heads are always better than one kind of mentality to that, especially across offices, because, we meet with the full music department as a video conference every couple of weeks, but the amount of, nitty gritty, so-and-so going out looking for support kind of things, it's good to kind of have ears in different places because...
Right. Kupferman's going to overhear different things in a different office than you're going to overhear. He's going to hear what Marty and Larry are talking about.
Right. And that's always a good thing, just to have that info and have those people. And the experience too. I mean, everybody has different experience, and every agent works differently and has better relationships with different promoters, and it's just better.
I got to imagine when you're, in case of Sturgill, Jonathan Levine's on the team, I got to imagine that's a cool thing to be able to like have him make some of those calls to some of those legendary older guys that have been around forever.
Totally. Yeah. And I came up on Jonathan's desk, so we worked together on a lot of stuff. So we kind of get how each other works, and it's easy.
Let's talk about that for a second, because I think there's probably a lot of younger listeners that coming up on his desk is great, but how do you get that opportunity? Because that's the desk you want to learn from.
Yeah, it's it's a good story, actually, and I don't know if we've ever talked about it in public, but Jeffrey Hassan was Jonathan's assistant before I was. And, Jeffrey was kind of getting to that point where, he was booking a lot of stuff and he was feeling a little antsy and wanting to get promoted. So we kind of schemed to have me work on Jonathan's desk when he went on vacation. But Jeffrey he played it the right way. He made Jonathan think it was his idea to have me do it. and so when Jeffrey went on vacation, I worked on Jonathan's desk because I was doing ticket counts at the time. And it just worked out really well and went from there.
The concept of ticket counts, like you really started from the nitty gritty and learned your way up.
Oh, yeah. I mean, yeah, ticket counts is a soul-sucking gig. I mean, it really is, because it's the last thing promoters want to respond to, a lot of the time, just because there's so much other important stuff going on. So it's always, chasing people and that. But yeah, it was starting at the bottom rung of the ladder for sure.
Some people worse than others, like traditionally on that?
No comment.
I didn't ask you for names.
Yeah, no, there's always a couple that are slower to respond than others. Yeah.
We have 3 dedicated people between the offices that just deal with getting those things out, which I got to say is a huge part of our overhead. And it wasn't something we had to deal with 5 or 6 years ago. The volumes of shows have the traffic on the road's insane.
Yeah, it's nuts.
So the volume of shows that we're all dealing with is amazing. And like ticket counts themselves take each of them about an hour, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, which is traditionally for the industry to get counts. And that's usually when we see everything, unless there's that moment where it's like it's an on sale, we want to see them every 15 minutes, or we're coming into the last 72 hours or something, or they played Saturday Night Live, we want to see if there was a spike, something like that. But traditionally, it's Monday, Wednesday, Friday, at 10 a.m., counts go out. But that's become like stone now. It's like everybody needs those counts. Before it used to be an agent check-in once a tour. It's like, how's it selling? If it's selling really bad, we're calling them going, dude.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I feel like technology is going to catch up with that at some point. It already happens a lot with Ticketmaster One.
Because you guys can code in, right?
Yeah,
you can give me your code and I can just code you in.
Right. So it's getting to the point where it's going to be a little bit better, I feel like.
I love that transparency because promoters and agents had a little bit of a used car salesman vibe to them, especially here in Nashville in the 70s and 80s and into the early 90s. And our industry has really legitimized itself. And the things of the transparency has brought about where an agent asks to be coded in on Ticketmaster One. It's like, sure, why would I have my audit from you? You can see stuff around, and I'd probably even give you some access to move stuff around if you want to. You know, it's like that ability, because together we can maximize flexing and figure out what's not working and get involved with marketing. But if you want to look at those counts 6 times a day, I don't want you calling me 6 times a day to call Ticketmaster.
Right.
Open it up.
The info's out there and it's easily accessible. So I do think in recent years, you know, a lot of that stuff you were talking about was before my time as well, but it definitely feels like more of a team atmosphere between all the parties.
Well, it's been a long time since I've heard about somebody bringing a gun to settlement.
Right, right, exactly.
There's definitely a long history, and some of the older guys have shared that, where the relationship between a promoter and agent was that one of yelling back and forth. Whereas if we're unhappy with each other, you know, it's a stern email. And then 2 minutes later, it's like, we should probably talk.
Right. Exactly. No, it definitely feels like more of a team environment.
It's very much an everybody gets a trophy kind of industry now.
Right.
The volume of shows has changed that too, because we all vote with our wallets. And if one of us pissed off the other one, or we felt like there was a bad deal or something wasn't clean, we're probably not calling that person back real quick next time. And there's plenty of other options as far as other agents, other acts, because there's so much traffic. And at the same time, plenty of other promoters, plenty of other clubs. We both have the options. We don't have to work together.
Yeah. Well, and on the promoter side as well, it's something I just try to keep in mind, and I say it more than I probably should. And at the end of the day, it's your guys' money, and how you spend it is not taken for granted. So it's just something to keep in mind. It's a lot of traffic out there for sure.
Some of the guys that are coming up in the business, you work with a big agency at Paradigm, and you guys keep gobbling up more and more people. There's some of the guys that we should be on the watch for?
Yeah, I mean, we have a lot of good young agents at our company. You know, Jenny Deloach in our office here has been great. You know, Matt Runner, work with Matt on a lot of things. Cody Jinks, Whitey Morgan, stuff like that. And yeah, I mean, it's been great. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun to continue to expand, like you said, working with other agents in other offices too. You know, the Monterey International guys, you know, musically kind of jive with my personal taste a lot. So, you know, it's going to be fun to work with those guys.
You moved from Monterey to here and changed your life in a great way, because it's 2 great, beautiful places, but completely different vibe. But picked up and left, and it seems like there's a trend now of contemporary guys coming to Nashville. It's not just country anymore. I mean, obviously Jonathan did it too, but Seth Siegel just did it at William Morris. We're seeing it from CAA. Brian Manning's here. It's like, this is a thing now.
Yeah, it's a great place to be in regard to the fact that you can go out and see shows every night of the week if you want to. So it's like LA and New York in that respect, but it's also a little bit more laid back, and you can afford to buy a house here and things like that. Just quality of life wise, it's a little bit better personally, I think, than New York and LA. So I can see why people are doing it.
Any advice for young guys coming up in the industry on how to break through?
Yeah, just say yes to things. I think that's the biggest thing. And I've told this story before too. I don't know if we've ever talked about it, but I was really close to not going to see the Lumineers the first time I went to go see them, because I lived in Monterey and it was a 2-hour drive, and they were playing in San Francisco, and it was a Tuesday night, and it's 4 hours in the car to go see a 45-minute set. And I was really close to not going. And it's just one of those things that always kind of stuck with me. It's just like, say yes to people and go out and do stuff. Meet as many people as you can. You know, that's kind of one of those things that everybody always says is, you know, meet everybody you can. But it's not easy coming up, and it's a lot of luck in this industry, I feel like. And if you're saying no, then you're significantly reducing your chances of getting lucky.
Thank you so much for taking the time.
Yeah, definitely, man.
Joe is currently pitching the music industry's equivalent of a no-hitter, the role this guy is on.
This is Tom Wildridge from Ticketmaster, and you're listening to Promoter 101.
Steiny, I want to jump into some of the tweets from the past week that you made. Can you humor me and explain what was going on in your mind when you wrote each one of these Promoter 101 tweets? Start with this one. Could someone explain to me why it costs $100 to $300 a show for internet access at venues per day when the rest of the world has it for $29.99 a month?
Yeah, I don't know how many times I have to pay for the same fucking router at these venues, but yeah, it's on every settlement.
How about this one? I wish people in our industry had bigger egos.
Said no one ever?
When you reply to an email instantaneously and get an autoresponder from them.
Yeah, it's just an amazing pet peeve.
This one was submitted by John Sanders. When you finally get marketing and ticking letters for a show that has been confirmed for 2 months and they demand a 24-hour turnaround to approve materials. Hashtag Promoter 101.
John, I'm right there with you. It seems like contracts confirm shows that have been done forever, but the week of the show, suddenly like, here's the contract and we need a deposit today. Thanks, guys.
When the show does not gross the talent fee and the tour wants to question everything on settlement, hashtag Promoter 101, hashtag what don't you understand?
You know, there's an etiquette to settlement. You don't question the catering bill or the advertising when you know that we didn't make enough even to pay you your act fee. What are you fighting about? Just nod your head and say, thank you, let's move on. You want an audit? No problem. You want to see the labor bill? No problem. But do we really need to fight over the cost of catering on a show that didn't gross your talent fee?
When the TM wants to rescale the venue after doors, hashtag Promoter 101, hashtag box office has got to go postal, hashtag thanks for your request.
If you're going to do this and your show's not selling, that's fine. We want to address the house. We want to make it look good. We want it to be happy. But once the fans are in the room, now we're messing with their experience. And we got to remember the fans come first. Above the artist in many cases, once they're in the house, you got to let it go.
When the support act is pissed they're not in marketing, but you only learn they had been added 24 hours prior to the show, shockingly, they've been confirmed for months. Hashtag that would have been good to know. Hashtag Promoter 101.
Yeah, I think this is just disheartening for everyone because you know the act is on the road trying to build fans. They may have been worth some tickets in the market. We could have gotten them into all media that would have cost us nothing. And they might have been worth some tickets. It's really, really sad.
When some random person calls you to say they're the major promoter in Bend, Oregon, and they're going to be doing all the shows in the market from here on out, hashtag Promoter 101.
I didn't know there were major promoters in Bend, Oregon, but yeah, I don't know who you are, and I don't think you just get to decide you're a major promoter. I think volume speaks to that, and, well, the rest of the industry.
Don't get me wrong, I love Bend, Oregon. I'm just saying, what a weird place to get all territorial, you know?
Yeah, a bunch of the venues in the market quickly reached out to let me know that they were more than happy to continue to take our business in that market.
How about this one? Where do these people find my phone number? Hashtag Promoter none oh none.
I don't know how these people find me, but I guess it's the podcast. Maybe it's Pollstar's directory, but yeah, thanks for the phone call. And once again, Bend, Oregon. Gotcha. By the way, we confirmed Jesse Cook to play Bend, Oregon 10 seconds after that happened.
Last one. Gross and net are not the same thing.
I think people get confused by this often, and it's the first day of accounting when they teach you gross means what the show brought in. Net means the profit the show made. The difference is all the difference in the world.
That's going to do it for Promoter 101 Tweets the Week. You can keep up with Dan on Twitter. He's at the Jew. He is tweeting furiously and often. If you have your own Promoter 101 thoughts, you can also email them to us. Feel free to tweet them at us. The show is at Promoters101, or you can email them over to Steiny@Promoter101.net. Whatever we like, we use on the show.
It's John Finberg from First Row Talent, and I'm on Promoter 101.
This week's war story is some serious history with a legendary agent and manager, the great Tony Conway.
Tony, you've got an amazing war story out there, plenty to pick from, but I'd like to hear the one about Dixie Chicks.
Well, okay, the Dixie Chicks, we were fortunate enough to sign them and represent the Dixie Chicks for almost 15 years. For the first 10 years of their career, wore cowgirl outfits and looked like Dale Evans. Did a lot of corporate dates and that kind of thing. As they progressed and got their record deal and exploded and started selling out arenas, things just took off, and all of a sudden they had sold 5 million records, 6 million records, and 8 million records, and I remember the number 9 million records. So we were finishing up playing a tour in Nashville at Bridgestone Arena. A couple of days before, I remember Simon Renshaw, the manager, saying, "Okay, Conway, it's time for you to get your chicken feet," because we had all made a pact when the girls first got their record deal. For every $1 million records we would get one chicken foot tattooed on our leg. So I'm thinking, wow, when it gets up to 20 million, there's going to be a lot of chicken feet. But every time that they had an opportunity, they would get a tattoo artist, and they would get the three girls, Simon, a couple of the crew guys, and me, and Paul Lohr. And so I had to get 9 chicken feet. And I said, okay, sound check's over. The girls are in. They get theirs updated. And Simon says, okay, your turn. So I go in. They had hired a tattoo artist to come, took off my shoe, my sock. They were going to do it around your ankle. So I put my foot up on his leg, and he says, okay, you ready? And I said, yeah. And the door bust open, and it's Simon Renshaw. And he goes, get the fuck out of here, Conway. I have got to get my chicken feet first. Got to do a press conference, and I don't have time. I got to do it now. You know, you're not that important. You can wait. Get the hell out of here. So I was like, okay. So I take my foot down. I leave the room. He comes busting back out of the room, and he says, okay, it's your turn. Now go in there and get that done. So I walk in. The tattoo artist is just laughing. He said, you don't really want to get these tattoos, do you? I said, not really, but I made him a promise. He goes, let me see if I can help you out. So he said, I got an airbrush. I'm going to put your chicken feet on with this airbrush. Maybe you can show them a picture or whatever. I said, well, they're going to take a picture after the show with everybody. He said, perfect. So he airbrushed 9 chicken feet on my leg, which to get the actual tattoos.
Here's the thing, though. The living reminder after a band lets you go that you got tattoo every day. You see that every day when you take a shower. You don't have to deal with that anymore. It's like hard enough when they let you go. You're reminded every day.
Yeah. I had an artist that tattooed his wife's face on his arm, and they got divorced. And so he has to live with that every day. After the show, we all pulled our pants leg up and took a picture with our tattoos. I'd love to have that picture. I don't have it. To this day, Simon and the girls don't know that mine was airbrushed on. There's one of my little war stories.
Awesome. Love it. Thank you so much for joining us on Promoter 101.
Thanks.
The great Tony Conway.
We got to extend a big thanks to Tony for joining us on Promoter 101 for that amazing war story. If you'd like to join us and share a war story on Promoter 101, please shoot us an email at steiny@promoter101.net.
This is Lenore Kinder. I work for AEG Presents, and you're listening to Promoter 101.
We're also joined this week from Live Nation New York, Sean Striegel. He's going to give us his point of view in the state of the industry and one of the biggest markets in the world.
We're at the Plaza, and I'm joined by an old friend, Mr. Sean Striegel. Welcome to Promoter 101.
Thanks, Dan. Really happy to be here.
Your career and mine parallel each other. Both been promoting shows for almost exactly the same amount of time, and we start out with the same roots of people. So it's easy to get along with you. You're one of the most likable guys in the industry as far as I'm concerned.
Thanks, Dan. I appreciate that. I guess punk rock isn't all as evil as people think it is, even for those of us that are pretty varied in our areas that we work in. But that's how we all started. Not all of us, but some of us.
Punk rock and ska punk, Rasta funks.
Oh, everything you can think of. I mean, Orange County in the 80s was just exploding with so many different kinds of music. So to start promoting at that time was really an exciting time.
The Dancehall Crashers and Hepcat. The early days of Skank and Pickle and No Doubt when they were still a 4-piece.
Yeah, No Doubt right out of high school. Fishbone was bigger than ever.
Voodoo Glow Skulls killing it out of Riverside.
Oh my God, I love the Glow Skulls. But, you know, there was also, you had Social Distortion.
Agency, Mr. Rick Bondi love, man.
Yes, and when Corey Christopher was working for Rick.
Yeah, totally. Corey cutting her teeth there. And I think Rick Bondi gave us all our start.
Yeah, he definitely did.
Whether it was you or me or even Nailing up at Union Canada, which I guess is also now Live Nation. God damn, you guys are eating up all of us.
I wouldn't say we're eating anybody up. I'd say what we're doing is inviting the right people to join the team. Wow, that's about as douchey corporate as it gets.
Well, I guess we're not the right people. Yeah, let's talk about the path, how you got through from day one to here.
Oh my God. Musician, terrible musician.
What'd you play?
Bass. I still do. And I have an 8-year-old who thinks she's a bass player now. That's pretty interesting.
What's your rig?
I have a couple. My go-to is a mid-70s Fender P-Bass.
Nice.
Yeah, I like it. It's a fun one. And then I have a little Ampeg rag. It's fun to play with. I enjoy it.
Do you keep one in the office?
I have a guitar in the office, but not a bass in the office, no. Which is strange. I should. I'll bring one in.
When was the last time you gigged?
I've played with a couple of the bands just for fun. You know, I know you had Pete on here a couple of weeks ago, but when I did Jane's Addiction down at the Stone Pony Summer Stage 2 years ago, actually, I've got a very long history with those guys, and it was nice. And in the dressing room to actually play a little song with them was an absolute blast. And yeah, somebody my age.
You got to play with Jane's?
Yeah, I did.
On stage or in the dressing room?
In the dressing room.
Still.
How could you not? It was ideal. It was 2 days after my birthday.
That's now your new birthday. Holy shit,
no
man.
doubt. We had just been one of the very first shows to play at the brand new Coney Island Amphitheater, and it sold out. It was absolutely amazing, and it was their first day of the tour, but it was also just fantastic to have kind of that reconnection in the dressing room down there in Asbury, which I really hold really close to me. It's a pretty exciting place.
So you were competing with Golden Voice and what, Bill Fold and those guys, right?
Bill Fold, John Panel was a promoter at that point. He was doing a lot of things up at Public Storage. I was more South County, and he was more North County, Orange County is what I'm talking about. You know, I was leading kind of a double life. I was in my 20s, and I was in a professional job working for another company, and I was doing that during the day. Had nothing to do with entertainment, and then being a concert promoter at night. And there came a point in my life where I was kind of having to make this decision. Which way am I going to go? Am I going to retire wearing a suit and tie, or am I going to follow what I'm really loving doing? And I took the house gig, and from that moment, I was booking the Coach House and the Galaxy Theater, which is now the Observatory, as well as doing shows up at the Ventura Theater, the Cajun House in Scottsdale, Arizona. We had the Coach House in Santa Barbara, and an occasional little local festival type things.
Those are all great markets for Sizzler.
They were all great markets. I mean, look, Orange County really, throughout the 80s and 90s, it really wasn't a destination when a band was touring.
Yeah, it was Disneyland.
Exactly, it was Disneyland. It very rarely got an amazing show, and if you were lucky, you got a stop in between LA and San Diego or between LA and Vegas.
And now, obviously, that's been developed between the House of Blues there, which obviously you have put on the map, and obviously now Nederlander's got the Grove there, and the Performing Arts Center in Costa Mesa. Like, those are all three really solid stops now.
In 2000, House of Blues decided it was going to open up a venue in Orange County. And Kevin Moore was the head of talent at that time. And John Panel was lined up to be the buyer for the room. And there were discussions about having another buyer. And they approached me about coming to work for House of Blues. I hemmed and hawed about it and had lots of discussions inside and outside the industry. And that's right then is when I decided I'd do it. I've never looked back since. You know, House of Blues opened in January 2001 in Anaheim, had an absolutely amazing run. A couple years later, Live Nation bought House of Blues. I stayed with it, and 2007 got the opportunity to move to New York, and I did.
Who's that phone call from when they say move to New York? How does that come?
It was like three people, 4th of July weekend, sitting in my backyard after having quite a few drinks, entertaining, get this phone call out of the blue. And it was just like, hey, Sean, so I'm going to be moving to New York. Wow, Kevin, that's great. I mean, at this point, I wasn't working for him, but I was like, that's really cool. He's like, well, they're allowing me to pick my team. It's like, wow. All right, let's hear about it. It's like, it's going to be me, Jason Miller, and I'd like you to come out too. That really meant a lot to me, and I had to think about it because you hear that whole theory of big fish in the small pond versus switching it up and going to being in somewhere completely new, and that's what coming to New York offered so many great opportunities, but it also was like starting over. So that was all sorts of decisions I had to weigh, and I did. And I'm pretty happy that I did it.
When it's an interesting thing because you were a big deal in your scene. You came up in it. You knew all the players, the tastemakers. You knew the people to talk to there. Like you were starting from square one here.
Right. You know, when I finally moved out to New York from California, I was the director of the clubs for Orange County and San Diego for Live Nation. You know, so I was mainly booking House Blues Anaheim, but also booking House Blues San Diego.
So was Candace under you when she started?
No, Candace was an equal because she was also doing the casinos as well as a couple of other things. So we were just an amazing tag team. So I'd already had that, you know, little bit of a challenge about trying to learn stuff about new markets. And about that time is when things started to get interesting with the landlord in Anaheim. It just appeared that there wasn't going to be that next step opportunity for me anytime soon on the West Coast. So coming out to the East Coast with the relationships that I had and what I had created for myself throughout Orange County, I thought I'd have a good opportunity to take that somewhere new and try and build upon that. Get a book shows at, you know, Radio City, The Beacon.
What's the first show you booked at the Garden?
I'm just doing my first show at the Garden right now. officially as like start to finish a buyer, it's Queens of the Stone Age in October.
It's confirmed. It's done. You can talk about that.
Yep, I'm on sale.
Nice.
You know, it's been really cool. Also, when the company split into its North American Concerts division and its Clubs and Theater division, I stayed in the Club and Theater division, and I've continued to grow within that. And one of the greatest things for me is that, you know, just as you said, with those relationships that I had, having grown up in a specific scene, if you will, it was endearing to me because I had friendships and I had relationships with certain artists that just were so strong, and there was a bond of trust. And it was really interesting that as, you know, even though moving to New York where I hadn't had any history in it, all of a sudden bands who had been playing for other promoters would switch and come over and play for me just because of our history and the understanding of how I am as a promoter. So that's been really cool. And then what I was getting at was that one of the greatest opportunities that's been given to me is to not only be the local regional guy out here. I'm working with Stacy George. We're both senior vice presidents. I'm overseeing the market, the division, but she's really focused in on New York City and Brooklyn. And I'm really focused on looking at the whole big business picture, but as far as bookings, really focused on the outer markets of New Jersey, Long Island, and other third-party opportunities like that, while still being very involved in booking things within Manhattan.
And obviously Jason Miller's there. And
Jason's the president of the NAC division. There's also Stephen Gaber working over there, Marilyn Hauser.
I guess we should mention Ron Delsner.
Do you have him coming up anytime soon?
I hope so. That'd be great.
That's fantastic. And Jason Stone is also in that division as well. And then, you know, in our Club and Theater division, where we alone between Irving Plaza, the Gramercy Theater, the theater at Westbury, the Wellmont in Montclair, New Jersey, all of our Asbury Park properties that we work with and everything else, we're doing about 800 shows a year on just the Club and Theater side. So Stacy George and myself, Christian McKnight, Adam Fackler, Buck Crowell is our marketing director, and it's just an amazingly strong team here. Having that has also given me that opportunity to take my relationships that I have and now work with Yerke and Kelly Capp and Bill Dwight and the rest of the House of Blues Entertainment Division's Club and Theater touring team, to where I've had the opportunity now to actually put out quite a few national tours.
It seems like that's a move for both Lab Nation and AEG, utilizing the relationships that are already in place to maximize the number of dates that somebody's getting.
One thing that I'll say about Live Nation is the support from Ben Whedon and Ron Benson and the rest of the guys in the Club and Theater division. They recognize when one of us has a specific relationship, and a strong one. And the cool thing is that we're not afraid to work with our other buyers in other markets and make sure that if we really have the right room, that the band is playing in the right room. I think that that's where other people are afraid. If anybody ever figured it out right, you got to figure, if you look at all your markets, whether it's AEG or Live Nation or whoever it is, you have so many buyers in so many different markets. Everybody obviously has a strong relationship with an artist or a manager or an agent where they've really proven to be that person's guy. If you were ever to look at that on a national level and everybody just used their relationships for the better, I think it would change the game.
Well, I think the global business that Rapinoe has created, opposed to being just a UK and American business, which it really was before he took the reins, has developed into a new system of seeing world touring, bringing talent to parts of the world that hadn't been getting it and streamlining it. And I think you're going to start seeing sheds pop up in different parts of the world. I don't know how many people that listen to podcasts realize this or not. The shed business is an American business. It's popped up in Canada too a little bit, but the UK doesn't have them. They do stadium shows and they do park shows. It doesn't exist throughout the world. They have to use creative venues that they make. Same thing in South America. It's just not there yet. They use these soccer stadiums for concerts.
Exactly. I mean, internationally, you have your clubs, and your clubs are doing 300 shows a year. There isn't the shed business. It's, okay, we're going to do 100 stadium shows, and we're going to put on 100 all-day festivals, mini festivals, if you will.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's a whole different landscape. But the business is changing from the days of you and me doing $5 shows. Like, I remember the Queers being like, do a $6 ticket, and having the fight with them that $5 is punk rock, $6 is more than a punk rock show should ever be.
Everything has changed in the world. I mean, it's so much more expensive for everybody. You know, it costs the artist, it's expensive for the artist to be on the road. It's expensive for whoever owns the venue to actually own the venue. And staffing isn't cheap anymore either. I mean, the way it was when you and I were young, we can't get our buddies to come and play stagehand for the day and pray to God that somebody doesn't pass out because they did too much junk or something. I mean, it just doesn't happen.
Yeah, it was a different day. And I remember that moment of booking, I think it was Green Day or something, and Andy was just like, real stagehands. This is a real show. I don't care if they're your friends or not. They better have real experience.
How about the first time you had a tour manager ask for a security meeting? Do you remember that? I do. Remember, it's like, oh, shit. When they see all my buddies, we're in trouble.
I do. I was standing next to Rick Stewart. It was Satriani, Vi, Eric Johnson on the first G3 tour, and I didn't know what it was, and Rick put his hand over my mouth, and he was like, I'll get that as security. But it was that moment of like, maybe I'm over my head.
Yeah, but look at how far we've all come, man. It's been a great thing to see this renaissance in the music business. It's funny. I look back a couple of years ago and people would bitch if your house nut went up by $500, or people would complain about this or that. But the world's not the same as it was. And I think everybody's kind of understanding of that in the sense that we're not as safe as we thought we were at one point.
Yeah, nobody seems to bitch about the security bills being higher than they were after Paris. Paris really changed the game. And I saw venue bills go up on security across the world. And I don't get pushback from anybody. And it used to just be the punk and metal bands that were okay about whatever security bill was, it was. As long as the show was safe. And obviously the most active crowd, so it made sense. The bigger bands got it.
Right.
And that was never a problem. I'm sure you always saw that too.
Yeah, it was never a problem. But, I will say that one of the worst incidents that I ever had at a show was not at a punk and metal type show. The worst incident not worst incident, but one of the worst I ever had at a show was at a Smooth AC show. That's how I'll describe it. Unbelievably, it was all couples and it was all dates. And two gentlemen ended up getting into a fight at the back of a bar. And
at a Smooth AC show?
Yep, because one guy was hitting on another guy's girl. And it turned into a bottle getting broke on the edge of the bar and held up to somebody's throat.
Were you promoting jazz shows on your own?
No, it was before the House of Blues at some of the venues that I had worked at.
That would seem like a weird buy for you when you were an indie using your own money.
I was mostly punk and it was metal and it was that stuff and it was my own money. But when I took the house gig of being the in-house buyer at the Coach House in the Galaxy, the programming down there was so varied. And while the Galaxy skewed more towards a younger demographic, the Coach House was really the only thing that had been a consistent and was still open in Orange County. So, one night would be Willie Nelson, and then the next night would be a band from Hawaii, and then the next night would be a comedian, and then, I can't remember what year it was, getting close to Christmas, where it was Zodiac Mind Warp one day, X the next, and White Zombie the night after that. The place was never the same. It was nuts. You see it with a lot of the punk rock shows, is what may look like the most violent act of aggression. They're just having fun and they're picking each other up.
Yeah, no, the pit definitely polices itself on the flat floors at a Rancid show or a Dropkick Murphys show, and even a 6 Feet Under show. There's a pit etiquette. And on a flat floor in a stadium at Ozfest, it's fine because you've got the triple barricades that we cut across them. And over years, they figured how to do that and keep the kids safe. Let's pay it forward. Let's do a little mentoring. What are the things that you got to point out to the next generation coming up that are musts?
Go into it with a plan. When it comes to putting on the show, you really have to make sure you have all bases covered. I mean, nowadays, everybody's got money, in a sense, and everybody has access to money. So you're getting so many more independent promoters or people who just think it's so easy to put on a show. You see it in every nightclub that you walk past and everything. Understand what you're getting yourself into is probably the most important thing. One of the other most important things is do what you say you're going to do. If you say you're going to do this on ads, if you say you're going to do this for catering, if you say you're going to take care of the band in A, B, or C way, or you're going to get X, Y, or Z out of a building, follow through with it. And if you can't, be ready to explain why you can't. You shouldn't over-promise and under-deliver. I mean, that's a quick way to not get the next phone call.
Who are the agents that gave you the opportunities to break through?
There were 4 agents that really made a huge impact on me, and to this day, I think helped guide me and help me to really be the promoter that I am. And that would be Andy Summers, Steve Martin, Mark Geiger, and Kara Lewis. I can pick up the phone and I can call any of those 4. They'll take my call. They'll listen to what I have to talk about. They'll offer me words of advice. If it's a problem, we'll kind of dissect it, work our way through it, and be able to figure out what the true problem is and come up with the best solution to it. At the same time, if I need advice on the side about an issue that's going on with something else, I really feel that I can confide in those four. If I'm having a tough decision to make about something having to do with the music business, or just a really difficult decision about if I'm really making the right choice in something, I know I can call those four still to this day and get honest guidance from them.
Who are the promoters that were mentors to you?
Ken Phoebus. I worked with him side by side with him at the Coach House. I learned a lot from that guy. Gary Faulkner, who was the owner, taught me a lot about owning venues. The one that I think really helped set me up with understanding a lot more about truly being a promoter and getting to a national level, it would be Kevin Morrow and the whole House of Blues team that we had. I look back on the days of our conference calls that we had with Kevin leading the call, and, Yerke would be on it, and Sonny down in New Orleans, and Jim down in Florida, Teo up in Boston. There were so few of us. And we all really shared what our troubles were and what our best efforts were in a deal and how to overcome certain issues, and just shared information about shows as they played off and as shows as we were working on. So, I consider and say I really give it to Kevin Morrow for hiring me and bringing me into the House of Blues fold. But as far as like the influence on me as a promoter and really as a mentor, as a promoter, I'd really got to give it back to that House of Blues talent team.
Thank you so much for taking the time, Sean. This was great.
Thank you very much, Dan.
Striegel is a straight-up gangster in all the best ways. I mean, when you think about his office is like sandwiched between Delsner and Jason Miller, man, that guy has just got a amazing arsenal of mentors to pull from. Love this interview. Thanks for being on the podcast, Sean.
John Huey, co-head of the Office for CAA Nashville, Tennessee, Promoter 101.
Celebrating birthdays this week of November 6th to 12th, 2017.
MXPX, Mike Hergen, CAA's Danny Randall, and from the FedEx Center, Jeff Olson.
On Tuesday, wishing a happy birthday to Emporium's Angela Smith.
On Wednesday, Ticketmaster's David Marcus, Jeff Franklin, and Tom Windish.
On Thursday, a happy birthday to Phil Rosenthal and Monique McGuffin-Newman.
Friday, the Boise Center's Debbie Edson in the box office, and lovely agent Tam Martin.
And on Saturday, a happy birthday to Emporium Presents Todd Coder, ILMC's Greg Parmley, Mike Patton, and Mike Park.
Sunday, Derek Schaefer.
Happy birthday to all of you from the gang at Promoter 101.
I'm Dave Geller, right here on Promoter 101 podcast with Dan Steiny Steinberg.
On our show next week, we're going to have AEG Presents Lenora Kinder, coming off the success of promoting the Lumineers tour nationally, and the always controversial agent John Finberg joining us to talk about the moment that Nightwish is having.
If you want to drop us a note, just send us an email to steiny@promoter101.net. But until next week, we're wishing you sold out shows. Cheers.
Hey, what's going on? This is Bubbles.
This is Julian. And this is Ricky.
You're listening to Promoter 101.